UN says extractive industries not reaching people. Gulf MPs call for investigations into abuse of relief supplies. And the 2015 Games tickets now on sale.
This is National EMTV News with Tokana Hasavi.
Good evening and thanks for joining me again for Thursday's news. The United Nations has drawn attention to a November 2014 report that states that many ordinary Papua New Guineans are not benefiting from the revenues generated by the country's extractive industries. UN figures indicate that since independence in 1975, more than 18 billion kina has been generated by extractive industries with very little impact on human development indicators. EMTV Scott Wider with this story.
Since 1975, extractive industries have become a foundation for the big revenue that goes into government coffers. But while the figures are seemingly large, the United Nations Development Programme has raised concerns that key indicators have not shown strong improvement.
Since independence, very much since 1975, 18 billion kina have been generated by extractive industries. Of course, when we look around, we don't necessarily see that amount of money translated into increased levels of human development and well-being of Papua New Guineans.
Quoting from a 2014 report, Jorg Schimmel, the UNDP's representative in Port Moresby, says there's a mixed bag of developments. For instance, the average income per person has risen since the 1980s by 40%. Also, since 2012, Papua New Guinea has seen dramatic changes in the amount of revenue inflows, driven primarily by the extractive industries. While that's translated into record spending in the areas of health, education and infrastructure, not many are sure of the long-term impacts.
Economic growth, for example, is almost at world record levels, and for many years it has been very strong economic growth. But that at the same time, that wealth is not translating into well-being for all Papua New Guineans.
Papua New Guinea's challenges stem from various sources, including wastages that occur within government departments and other agencies. Also, anecdotal evidence indicates that district mechanisms for financial governance remains weak despite renewed efforts to contain theft and misappropriation. Scott Waide, National EMTV News, Lae.
The low volume of foreign currency in PNG's market is directly contributing to the continued depreciation of the kina. This situation, added with the low revenue coming into the government's budget, will affect government spending and its budget. While the Bank of PNG has issued directives to help stabilize the foreign currency market, Governor Loy Bakani has cautioned the government from starting any new projects this year.
The government had high revenue expectations from the LNG project in terms of raising the value of the kina and adding to the country's foreign reserve. Governor Bakani says he cautioned the government to lower its expectations then, and now his concerns are confirmed. The LNG revenue is coming in, but they are not at the levels as initially expected.
For the first 6 months of this year, this is what's happening. We're already starting to get the LNG revenue, but it's much lower. Tax will be due at the end of, this is tax only for LNG, I'm not talking about the others. This is LNG. Next month, we will get the mineral LNG taxes, and they're much lower because of that accelerated depreciation of the assets of the LNG project.
While he says some companies involved in the LNG project, such as ExxonMobil and others, have been able to bring in their revenue, this is still not enough.
So if this is a situation happening now, we're not seeing any change and the kina is going down, the demand for foreign currency is still there. The second half of the year, it does not look promising for us unless there is, some improvement in the oil price, which we, think might not happen, because the second half will be the time when we receive the revenues for exports that we're exporting this year. Okay, we're exporting in the first half of this year at prices of LNG much lower than, around 40 or less than $50 per barrel.
Governor Bakani says in order to stabilize the foreign currency market, they have used some of PNG's foreign reserve. He could not confirm figures in the low LNG revenue. However, he strongly encourages the review of the national budget.
Because you cannot continue to live beyond the means when the revenue is much lower. We'll be looking for trouble. If the government makes an adjustment on the budget side, it will reduce the pressure, because some of the pressure on the demand, increased demand, is coming also from government. Government spends a lot of money. If it's spent on those people getting the money, spend it on overseas imports, that's what increasing the demand for foreign currency. So the adjustment has to come from the source, and the source is the government.
In light of this situation, Governor Bakani's advice to the government is to hold off on any new projects this year.
Government has sufficient revenue, then they can bring them on board. But fundamentally now is to just concentrate on the existing projects. Main ones, the Pacific Games, some of the highways, some of the highways are now even incurring additional expenses because of the destruction by the bad weather conditions. So those are kind of things, it will eat up a lot of the revenue that we have for this year, they have for this year.
Sarah Aupong, National EMTV News.
In the meantime, Treasurer Patrick Praich has welcomed the central bank's initiatives to resolve the problems affecting the availability of foreign exchange, which is hindering domestic business activities. Mr. Praich reminded PPNG Governor Loy Bakani that the government's project agreements with mining and petroleum companies and some forestry and fisheries projects have a requirement for BPNG to ensure that the bulk of their export earnings are repatriated back into PNG. The Treasurer hopes that the status quo can be quickly restored so that free market conditions continue to prevail to enable the private sector to play its role in promoting PNG's economic growth. Opposition leader and member for Kandep, Don Pollier, says the O'Neill-Dion government should not be eyeing privatisation as a solution to economic growth. Pollier says the government has terribly failed in saving valuable assets in the country with its policy. The opposition leader made these comments on FM 100's Talkback show today.
It may come the wrong time.
The opposition leader was vocal with airline issues in the country. Mr. Pollier shared open dialogues with callers from around the country expressing concerns on the purchase of turbine engines and a call by the government to privatize PNG Power Limited.
Now, too long privatization, it may come the wrong time. Now, time is the organization, the Power PNG, may not stop long one good position.
Mr. Pollier said the national government is not doing enough, leaving PNG Power to crumble to its knees. He criticized the government what he termed as poor decisions.
And they're supposed to be fixing it. We only give him idea. The Prime Minister gave the perception that he was trying to fix Power PNG. And now he's saying you want to sell it. What is it?
The opposition leader says affairs of the country must not be jeopardized, leaving Papua New Guineans to suffer in receiving little or no basic services.
And when to sell it is dependent on how well the country's economy is doing. He's going to go out to the rural areas and grow the country's economy through tangible policies, unlike what it's doing right now.
Meanwhile, Mr. Pollier said the tax credit scheme is not used properly by the government. He wants that to be halted.
Doing some of this infrastructure in Port Moresby, for instance, are not in line with the policy guidelines of the tax credit scheme.
The opposition leader says the opposition will continue its fight and challenge the government in addressing issues affecting the people of this country. Jack Lapave Jr., National EMTV News.
PNV drivers in Lae say the cost of maintaining their buses have decreased after the main roads were improved. Lae now has the tag Cement City, an upgrade from the Pothole City tag. Over the last 10 years, road maintenance in the industrial hub were carried out by contractors. Main roads within the city boundaries have been completed, but work is still being carried out on roads outside of the city. MTV's Bethany Harriman has more on this report.
Lae's roads 10 years ago could be compared to any other roads throughout the country, deteriorating and potholed. Over the years, successive contractors were given the task of fixing and upgrading a vital infrastructure that would aid growth in a city that generates 65 million kina of the country's revenue. Lay carried the tag Pothole City. Now that perception has changed to the Cement City. About 80% of the city's main roads are now made up of cement, while 20% are bitumen. Lay City bus drivers and owners say their buses have been able to run on the road without frequent tire and shock absorbers changes that were costly in the past. Over the last decade, Lay roads have drawn attention from political heads, including Prime Minister Peter O'Neill. It was an eyesore and caused problems for Lay residents and businesses. Costs of maintaining vehicles hit the roof. Over the years, it's estimated that around 400 million kina was spent on the Lay roads alone. While the roads were being fixed, there were also concerns about the way contracts were given out to contractors who didn't have the capacity to complete the task. There were also the unfinished work being left behind by contractors who asked for variations amounting to millions of kina. Bethany Harriman, National EMTV News, Lay.
PNG is vulnerable to many impacts of climate change. It affects almost all socio-economic sectors and resources, including people. Funded by the World Meteorological Organization, or WMO, a two-day National Climate Outlook Forum started in Port Moresby today. The forum provides climate knowledge, mechanisms and processes that individuals and authorities need to know to overcome climate change effects. The PNG Weather Service is advising everyone to make use of the available information, know and understand it, and be prepared for future climate change for sustainable development. Among stories coming up after the break, Gulf provincial leaders call for authorities to investigate relief supplies that were left to rot. Stay with us. Thanks for your company and welcome back to National EMTV News. Kikori MP Mark Maipakai and Kerema Open MP Richard Mendani have called for investigations into the abuse of Gulf relief supplies. Both MPs were disappointed with the manner in which the relief supplies were handled. The relief supplies were valued at 2.5 million kina from the 3 million kina released by Prime Minister Peter O'Neill.
It wasn't a sigh of relief for Kikori MP Mark Maipakai and Kerema Open MP Richard Mendani. Both MPs visited Nebo Jetty today at Tubuseria village to inspect the condition of the food items. They cried foul over the alleged gross abuse of public funds used to purchase these food items which never reached their destination.
This is a situation, unexplainable situation which we are totally, disturbed because our people have lost lives. People have still not come back to normal life. But this is another abuse of public funds by Gulf administration.
When that 3 million was released, it went into the hands of very few selected individuals who have over the years benefited out of any funds that have gone to it. They have always benefited out of it at the expense and suffering of the people of Kerema and Kikori.
According to Oliver Kelly, an employee of Mundi No. 1 Limited, the shipping company tasked to deliver the relief supplies, the containers were here for 8 months. Initially, there were 6 containers. However, the other 3 containers containing building materials were alleged to have been taken by a man of Asian origin. Mr. Mendani has called on the Gulf Provincial Disaster Coordinator Jerry Harpe to explain why the relief supplies were never distributed. Had it been distributed, the relief supplies could have benefited over 150,000 people of the Gulf Province. However, it was left to rot and left to the snakes to feed on. Police have been informed and investigations will commence soon. Mickey Cavera, National EMTV News.
The 18th graduation ceremony for the University of Natural Resources and Environment, set for tomorrow, has been deferred to April 10th. No explanation was given for this deferral. Social media, however, showed photos of UNRE students marching with banners announcing a mass withdrawal. The circumstances behind this unrest are unclear, but UNRE staff confirmed that students had boycotted classes for days. Debate for Bougainville's new mining bill is on. Yesterday, the Bougainville House of Representatives resumed its final 73 sitting. We now join our journalist, EMTV's Fabian Hakelitz, for this report.
The Bougainville House of Representatives is conducting its final sitting this week before the issue of its coming Friday for this year's general election. Members of the House are debating on the Bougainville Transitional Mining Law. Once passed, it will become Bougainville's new mining law. Government business of the day was the Bougainville Mining Bill. While minority were against the bill, most members of the House supported it and thanked the Momis Nisera government for recognizing land owners as part and parcel of the package. One member was North Bougainville Women's Representative Elizabeth Tanti Burain, who was supported by her two other women leaders of Central and South regions. But concerns were raised on grievances that are to occur in future. The government of the day must have the power to address it.
Be repeated. It will be rewarding for the educated elite to be part of the solution.
Now, Bougainville President Chief Dr. John Momis has brushed aside critics, saying that this new mining law will not benefit Bougainville. It's historic for Bougainville, as this law gives full rights and recognition to landowners. Fabian Hakelitz, National EMTV News, Buka.
Lay police have received reports of a string of armed robberies which occurred since Saturday. Police say an estimated 100,000 kina was stolen from 3 business houses in Lay City. Investigations into the robberies have commenced, and police say at least 10 suspects are involved. Cocoa farmers in Papua New Guinea now have an opportunity to gain valuable knowledge on how to improve their cocoa production. This follows the opening of a cocoa training facility in Tokeala, East New Britain.
For many years, cocoa had been a leading provider of income for farmers within the agriculture sector. However, due to various reasons, one of which being the outbreak of cocoa pod borer in 2006, cocoa production had drastically fallen, leading to a fall in income for many. As part of its efforts to help cocoa farmers get back on track, NGIP Agmark took the initiative to establish a training facility to provide an avenue for farmers to gain a better understanding of how to cultivate cocoa post-cocoa pod borer. The Tokeala Cocoa Training Facility was an initiative of NGIP Agmark as a lead partner through a public-private agriculture program facilitated by the World Bank. The facility was built with part funding from PNG Sustainable Development Program. The facility provides hands-on experience and teaching where farmers from cocoa-growing provinces in PNG come to learn how to cultivate cocoa the correct way using the very latest cocoa management techniques.
It has been at Tokeala that it was first demonstrated that the pod borer could be managed and controlled. This has given hope to everybody in cocoa areas around PNG.
The centre was established with the aim of improving cocoa production, especially in light of the destruction caused by cocoa pod borer in many parts of Papua New Guinea. According to Otto Quaimba, NGIP Agmark's Senior Manager Plantations, the centre is capable of training up to 20 farmers at any one time, with the aim of having these farmers also share their knowledge in their respective areas upon completion of their training.
Basically lead farmers, that they become an extension officer at their own village level again. So we train on redevelopment, maintenance, nursery upkeeps, nursery management, up to CBB management. And also we try to show them possible working models will be better for them if they do take it up as a business at the village level.
Mr. Quaimba is hopeful that more cocoa farmers can be able to access the training programs provided at the Tokeala facility. This, he says, will go a long way in helping cocoa farmers get back on track. Merabatulo, National EMTV News.
80% of all startup businesses fail in the first year of operation. That's according to global statistics. However, the National Development Bank's SME Stratpasin Retail Incubation Program has a 90% success rate. This was highlighted at the launch of the bank-initiated first convenience shop in NCD.
The ordinary street of Hohola in the nation's capital came to a standstill when a high-powered delegation arrived. Prime Minister Peter O'Neill was among other government ministers and dignitaries to launch NDB's first convenience shop in NCD through the SME Stratpasin Retail Business Incubation Program. They were there to celebrate with the shop owners Vi and Ranu Boyemea. The guests were also given a grand tour inside the convenience shop. It took 4 years in the making, but the benefits derived from this small to medium enterprise is said to increase employment for locals and subsequently increase the GDP from 10% to 50%. The government aims to increase the number of SMEs to 450,000 in the next 15 years.
2030. Having 450,000 SMEs will create 2 million new jobs and a broader tax base for Papua New Guinea.
NDB requested 435 million kina for its group of companies, but was only given 50 million kina. However, due to its commitment to revive the Stratpasin Business Incubator, the bank has allocated 10 million kina from its internal revenue for the program. This will see NDB Investments spend 10 million kina to set up 10 shops throughout the country.
Our vision is to increase our coverage from 2 shops per region to 2 shops per province. Honorable Prime Minister, we intend to open 44 shops throughout the nation next year.
Prime Minister Peter O'Neill, who is the newly appointed chairman of SME Council of PNG, is supportive of the government's SME policy. Of the 5,000 applicants, only 10 were chosen for the Business Incubation Program. He says this goes to show that Papua New Guineans are interested in setting up businesses.
It requires discipline.
He has assured citizens that the government will provide specific funding in the 2016 national budget. However, this will depend on the performances of the current pilot sites. Bridget Komatep, National EMTV News.
And now we take a look at the finance news. The kina closed 20 points lower at $0.3745 in the interbank market. And at Bank South Pacific, our kina was fetching $0.367, $0.4652 Australian dollars, $0.3305 euro, and 43.4 Japanese yen. Looking at commodity prices at New York close, gold, coffee and cocoa closed the day higher, copper closed lower, while palm oil and copper closed lower and crude oil closed the day higher. And finally on the stock market, the Dow Jones closed at 293 points lower, the ASX closed at 94 points lower, and the All Ordinaries closed at 88 points lower. You're watching National EMTV News tonight. We'll bring you more local news after the break, including our headlines overseas, the latest on flight 9525 that crashed in the French Alps. Stay with us. Thanks for your company and welcome back. Limited TB facilities at the Angao Hospital in Lae continue to remain a problem for the hospital as cases of TB increases. Deputy Chief Physician at the hospital, Dr. Bellari, says there has to be more microscopy facilities that can be screened for tuberculosis at Angao. Angao Hospital remains the only hospital in Morabit Province that does diagnosis for TB patients all over Morabit's 10 districts.
TB statistics at Angao have risen over the years, and the quantity of detection facilities needed to diagnose patients' sputum is less than the number of TB patients who come here.
If we don't take control of the first line, the drugs that we're using now, with the improvement of the micro-diagnostic part of it and the treatment part of it, then we will end up with this MDR TB coming up. So we should have the very concrete and well facilities well resourced.
While drug treatment for TB is readily available, TB diagnosis testing facilities remains an area that requires government attention. As our local hospitals continue to exhaust their available resources to reduce TB in the country, the Australian government has also come in to fight TB in the Asia-Pacific region by pledging over 60 million kina to the country recently. 6 out of every 10 admissions at Engau Hospital are TB cases. It is an alarming statistic representing the whole country. The lab area that screens for TB at Engau is limited and microscopy facilities for diagnosis are few.
If we can really get down on diagnosing patients early by establishing microscopy facilities around the province, say Morobe province, and within Leh district, we should really be able to help diagnose patients quickly, then we put them on treatment.
Engau has been diagnosing hundreds of patients with limited facilities, and as the TB cases continue to increase, the government's participation with resource funding is vital. Colin Barilai, National EMTV News, Leh.
International Free West Papua campaigner Benny Wenda left for Brisbane, Australia amidst speculation of his deportation. The Secretary-General of the United Liberation Movement for West Papua, who arrived with Wenda yesterday, said there was an issue with his visa that prompted immigration officials to investigate. Their visit to PNG is to endorse the campaign for West Papua's application to the Melanesian Spearhead Group.
Stay in a France that he was intent to go. And then there's no security immigration officer watching, and then they just rang, we have fixed the ticket for you these hours, and then they didn't stamp his passport. So legally you can say that he's not a reporter.
The Asian Development Bank is providing a $1 million US emergency grant as part of broader assistance package to the government of Vanuatu after Tropical Cyclone Pam. Vanuatu was directly and severely hit by a Category 5 cyclone on the evening of March 13, causing 11 deaths and widespread damage. Regional Director of ADB's Pacific Liaison and Coordination Office in Sydney said providing emergency relief is the first step towards restoring essential services. He said the wider socio-economic impact of the cyclone could be very significant. ADB approved the grant under its Asia-Pacific Disaster Response Fund. Turning overseas now, one of the pilots on board Germanwings Flight 9525 was locked out of the cockpit when the plane crashed, a senior military official has told the New York Times. Investigators made a startling discovery in an audio recording from the plane's flight recorder. Authorities say finding the plane's second black box will also be critical to understanding the mystery of what went on inside the jet.
A day after the crash, pieces of wreckage are strewn across the bare mountains, disintegrated and hardly recognizable apart from the distinctive pink and orange of the Germanwings logo. Smoke still rises from the debris as recovery teams faced a second day of harsh weather conditions. The painstaking operation to recover the remains of those on board Flight 9525, already a huge challenge in the unforgiving terrain. The leaders of France, Spain, and Germany, the countries at the heart of the tragedy, traveled to the Alps to meet rescue workers. Their unity, a sign of the grief being felt on an international scale. Speaking afterward with Angela Merkel and Mariano Rajoy, President Hollande said everything would be done to understand what happened to the plane.
We owe that to the families. We owe it to the countries concerned by this disaster. So France has activated very significant means within the context of the inquiry so that we can know everything there is to know about the causes of the disaster.
The cockpit voice recorder has been recovered from the crash site. And some usable audio material has been extracted from it, according to the French Accident Investigation Authority.
It was a good news and relief for us. We have been able to extract an audio file that we can use. But it's too soon to draw any conclusions with respect to what happened.
As the wait for information continues, more is being learned about the people who were on board the flight. They were from at least 15 different countries. They included 2 babies, a class of German exchange students, and 2 opera singers. Families are in mourning and airline staff in shock. Germanwings and its parent company Lufthansa held moments of silence. And back in the Alps, the small towns near the crash site are preparing to receive families of the dead. Relatives who will make the pilgrimage into this remote mountain region, hoping to find answers.
On the same note, 150 victims of the doomed flight came from 18 countries, most of them German and Spanish nationals, amongst them 16 school children and 2 teachers on their way home from a student exchange in Barcelona.
We're learning more about the 3 Americans, 2 from Virginia, who lost their lives here. Emily Selke and her mother Yvonne, who was a 22-year veteran of the government contracting company Booz Allen Hamilton. Emily was a proud alumni of Drexel University's Gamma Sigma Sigma Zeta sorority. On its Facebook page, the chapter posted, "As a person and friend, Emily always put others before herself and cared deeply for all those in her life."
We can also confirm that a 3rd U.S. citizen was on board the flight, but are not releasing the name at this time out of respect for the family.
Among the others silenced here, 34-year-old opera singer Maria Radner, who was traveling with her husband and baby. Radner had just completed performances in Barcelona with her colleague Oleg Brizak, who died alongside her.
This is tearing a huge gap, and there will be scars left over.
At this headmaster's school in Germany, they are mourning the loss of 16 young students and 2 instructors. One teacher was recently married, the other engaged.
They had plans for their life, and that was changed from one minute to the next, like a burst bubble.
The school group had just finished an exchange program at this school in Spain. Outside, 2 students mourned over their final photo with their friends.
On Friday, we were with them all day on a field trip to the beach. They were really happy because they had never seen the ocean. It's hard to believe.
For many of the victims, death came in the prime of their lives. 28-year-old Paul Andrew Bramley from Britain was studying hospitality and set to begin an internship next week. 29-year-old mechanical engineer Greg Friday was traveling with his mother, who celebrated a birthday the day before the flight.
Meanwhile, Papua New Guinea's Prime Minister Peter O'Neill has extended the nation's sympathies to the families and nations of passengers on board Germanwings flight that crashed in France overnight. PNG's foreign missions in Europe are seeking to confirm that no citizens or resident Papua New Guineans were on that aircraft. Mr. O'Neill said the air crash in France was tragic and the loss of children is particularly disturbing. And National EMTV News continues with True Guy Sports, which is coming up next, and the tickets for the Pacific Games now on sale. I'll tell you more about that after the break. Stay tuned.
True Guy Sports.
Welcome to True Guy Sports. Individual vehicle owners, bus and taxi drivers have raised concerns about parking problems in the National Capital District. They said it's already getting worse and there is literally not enough space available for parking with the increase in the number of vehicles in Port Moresby City. There are even more concerns with the Pacific Games to be held in Port Moresby and with nationals from around the country, even tourists or visitors that will visit Port Moresby to see the Pacific Games may find it difficult to find parking spaces.
parking is going to be a major problem during the 2015 Pacific Games in July. Host city Port Moresby will now have to allocate proper parking areas in the city as the influx of used cars into Port Moresby is increasing, adding to more traffic congestion. While the main focus is on games facilities and participating sporting codes in line with other prominent services relating to the Pacific Games, such as game security, volunteers, medical assistance and catering, parking may be a real inconvenience for sporting teams, athletes and officials, including the general public, traveling to and from games venues. A vehicle owner and taxi driver, Anderson Poik, told MTV about concerns raised by the general public regarding parking areas in and around the city.
Now yeah, them through and pull up. And we pull up through na no got long car park, car and pull up so log up money can make him no got reach a place where by walking car park.
They said parking for the Pacific Games is another area that needs to be looked at as traffic conditions are getting worse each day in Port Moresby City. Pacific Games is not only going to attract nationals from around the country, but from the Pacific region as well as international visitors. Today, Pacific Games CEO Peter Stewart said as far as parking is concerned, car parks will be provided at allocated areas in the city for the Pacific Games spectators and the general public in and around the city.
There is no parking at the venues. It's important for people to realise that if they come to our venues, they need to park at some of the park and rides that are being established by NCDC. So they will be locations where you'll be able to go, park your vehicle. There'll be shuttle buses running from those locations to the venues.
Creating parking areas in the nation's capital will ease the pressure for vehicle owners and business houses, even for the Pacific Games athletes and visitors. Having parking areas in the city will not only lighten traffic conditions during the Pacific Games, but also after the Games, where individuals and businesses in Port Moresby can use. Godwin Eki, National, MTV Sports.
The 2015 Pacific Game venue tickets are on sale as of today. The ticket sales were launched at the BSP Harbour City branch in Port Moresby by the Games Organising Committee. There are 650,000 tickets for sale, with the public able to purchase at multiple outlets throughout the country.
Tickets will be sold over the next 2 weeks at selected BSP branches and thereafter at BSP and other merchants. The Games Organising Committee officially launched the sale of the 15th Pacific Games tickets at the BSP branch at Harbour City in Port Moresby today. The Minister for Sports and Pacific Games, with the Governor for NCD, Boas Paco, and members of the GOC office were at hand today to launch the sale of the Pacific Games ticket.
But today, I want to specifically call on our people in the city to do their part to support the successful hosting of the Pacific Games.
Governor Paco was given the honor to purchase the first 2 tickets as host. And the first 2 recipients were Esther Sapulai, a long-time serving veteran of New Guinea, and Benedict Ove, principal of Jubilee Catholic Secondary School.
We can show you now the venues are going to be ready. We've got tickets on sale. The relay has started. The sponsors are all in place. Come and enjoy these games. You'll regret it if you don't.
Desi Bobby was another customer who purchased 3 tickets for her family and expressed her excitement about being one of the first customers.
Time at the right place, being part of the launching this morning. Yeah. And I'm glad I'm one of the first to purchase it, so I don't miss out on being there.
The Pacific Games are not just about sports and strengthening relations with the Pacific, but they are an opportunity to restore unity, pride and nationalism. Tickets are now on sale and will be available at selected BSP outlets around the city. Shane Saroya, National, MTV Sports.
We'll take a short break here, but Trukai Sports continues after the break. Stay with us.
Trukai Sports.
Welcome back to Trukai Sports. To Rugby League, and SP Bury has made a commitment to remain a sponsor of the national competition, the Digicel Cup. A cheque was presented to Papua New Guinea National Rugby League today at the SP Bury headquarters. MTV's Elijah Levet has more on this story.
A 250,000 kina cheque was presented to the PNG RFL chairman Suthi Guru.
This sponsorship was seen as an important platform for rugby league, from the domestic competition to the international competition like the Queensland Interest Super Cup, in which the SP Hunters participate.
The Digital Cup gives coverage throughout whole Papua New Guinea in more than 7 centres each weekend.
Games will not be played in Port Moresby due to venues under construction.
They'll be played mostly outside Moresby. Unfortunately, in Moresby we don't have a venue available. So other than Moresby, all the venues will be like last year.
With the inclusion of a new team from the Jiwaka province, the 20-week season is set to kick off on the 19th of April. Elijah Lavette, National EMTV Sports.
And that's how we wrap up our sporting segment tonight. I'll be back with the weather details after these short messages.
True Kai Sports. True Kai Sports.
Looking at the weather forecast for tonight and tomorrow in southern region, Port Moresby to look forward to brief evening showers, Karama, a shower or two expected, showers in Poponeta and fine weather in Daru and Alutau. In Momase, Lei-Wiwak and Vanimo to look forward to rain periods, evening showers in Madang. In the New Guinea Islands, evening showers expected in Lorengau, fine weather in Buka, few showers for Kimbe, and brief evening showers in Kokopo and Kavieng. And in the Highlands region, Goroka and Kundiawa to anticipate brief evening showers, then morning fog, Mendi and Wabek, fine weather, then morning fog. Looking at forecasts for small ships within coastal waters of Papua New Guinea for the next 24 hours. All waters to experience seas of 0.5 meters to 1.3 meters. And looking at ocean forecasts for PNG areas, Coral Sea sees slight to moderate with southeast winds at 10 to 20 knots. Solomon Sea sees slight to moderate with southeast winds at 10 to 15 knots. Bismarck Seas sees slight with northwest to southwest winds at 10 to 15 knots. And lastly, Pacific Ocean sees slight to moderate with southwest winds at 10 to 15 knots. Now, before we go, quickly recapping our top stories again tonight. UN says extractive industries not reaching the people. Also, Gulf MPs call for investigations into the abuse of relief supplies, and 2015 Games tickets now on sale. And that's how we end the bulletin this Thursday. On behalf of the news crew, I'm Tokana Hasavi. Thanks heaps for your company. You take care and stay safe. Good night.